November 2025. Zhuhai Airshow. 2 seconds into China's world-class flex, the only OSINT that matters shows up. Receipts. Meet the J-20 Mighty Dragon, the poster child of Chinese airpower. On paper, 5th-gen Predator. On state TV, stealth apex hunter. In OSINT, serial numbers, runway clips, and a jet that can't outrun its own shadow. Vantage point. Runway centerline. Heat shimmer off the asphalt. 2 J-20s taxi out, upgraded, they say, with the new WS-15 engines, the long-promised domestic thrust monsters. The lead pilot spools up for the crowd pleaser, a low pass. Then the high alpha stunt. Nose pitches up into that dramatic Cobra-style maneuver. Everyone cheers. Then the exhaust betrays the script. Black smoke. Thick. Soot-heavy. Visible. That's not a cool effect. That's not stealth. In modern jet propulsion, that's a red flag you can see from the cheap seats. Because black smoke means incomplete combustion. Fuel that isn't burning clean. And that turns into 3 problems China can't edit away. Wasted energy, hotter signature, shorter component life. Now, compare the contrast Beijing doesn't want you to make. The US F-22 can pull off extreme maneuvers with F-119 engines and thrust vectoring nozzles making controlled, precise authority. The J-20 leans hard on oversized canards and aerodynamic brute force. No vectoring here, just geometry and hope. That smoke isn't just a visual glitch for the highlight reel. It is proof that China's engine program, despite years of hype, still can't match the heat control and fuel efficiency of engines that came off American assembly lines 20 years ago. Now, flashback to 2018, when Indian Air Force brass dropped the kind of line that makes stealth marketing teams sweat. Their Su-30 MKIs, solid but very much 4th gen, were picking up J-20s on radar from tens of kilometers away near the line of actual control. That's not invisibility, that's a spotlight. Why? Stealth isn't a magic spell. It's radar cross-section control from every angle, not just head-on. The J-20's design choices create vulnerabilities. Those canards help with maneuverability, but they also create RCS spikes when the jet banks, turns, or shows side aspect. So the Dragon can look low observable head-on, then swing to the side or rear and light up much bigger. Stealth that only works when you're pointed perfectly isn't all-aspect signature control. Contrast with the F-22 concept, shaping in materials built for all-aspect reduction, refined through billions in R&D and a long cycle of iteration. That difference is the gap between looks stealthy and stays stealthy when the geometry gets ugly. And geometry always gets ugly in a real fight. Now, let's do the part propaganda hates. Readiness math. By early 2026, OSINT, satellite imagery, serial number tracking, and Taiwanese-sourced leaks puts the J-20 fleet at roughly 300 airframes. That sounds huge next to the US Air Force's 186 F-22s. And if you stop there, the headline writes itself. But wars aren't won by inventory. They're won by jets that actually launch when the alarm klaxons blare, and this is where the war machine reality check really hurts. J-20 readiness hovering around 60%, bogged down by frequent engine overhauls. Those WS-15s aren't as reliable as advertised, and avionics software that's still buggy, prone to glitches in high EM environments like a jammed-up Pacific theater. Strip away grounded birds and you're at roughly 180 operational J-20s on a good day. Now flip to the US side. The F-22 is older, sure, but combat-coded squadrons have been clocking 80% plus readiness in the places that matter, like Elmendorf in Alaska or Kadena in Japan. That yields around 150 F-22s ready to fly fast. So the massive numerical edge becomes near parity. And that's before training enters the room. Because it's not just aircraft, it's pilots and repetition. US Raptor pilots grind thousands of hours through high-end sims and live-fire exercises like Red Flag, where they fight complex scenarios, degraded comms, and threat replication. Chinese pilots? They are still ramping, sortie rates roughly half, and too much time is spent on polished formations instead of chaotic combat problem sets. Then there's the close-range oops that's easy to ignore until you need it. The J-20's widely cited lack of an internal cannon. The F-22 carries a 20mm M61A2 Vulcan, a last-ditch option when missiles miss and everything collapses into a merge. The J-20? Missile only. In a jammed merge, that's a bad way to discover you brought no plan B. In a depleted weapons environment, it's a risk you don't want to discover mid-fight. January 2026. CCTV drops a hype reel on the Fujian, China's first carrier with electromagnetic catapults. EMALS-style tech that's supposed to announce, we're in the big leagues now. The world expects the money shot, the J-35, Beijing's carrier stealth answer to the U.S. Navy's F-35C. Instead, the footage cuts to a J-20? Yeah, a land-based interceptor doing carrier work. It launches, sure, but it doesn't belong there. That is not innovation. That is an emergency substitute. Because if the J-35 was truly ready, it would be the star of every propaganda loop. Instead, the timeline speaks for itself. First flight in late 2021, and by January 2026, it's still not showing up in the plan's operational lineup. So CCTV runs a workaround, testing a land-based interceptor in a carrier narrative. And the reason this matters isn't aesthetics. Carrier aviation is brutal. Salt, deck cycles, catapult stress, arrested landings, high-stakes trampolines for airframes. A platform not designed for it isn't just less optimized. It's a maintenance nightmare waiting to happen. J-35 versus F-35C? This isn't a fair comparison. The F-35C is operational. The J-35 is still a question mark. OSINT receipts, spotter shots, and leaked engine specs put J-35 internal fuel around 8.5 to 9 tons, paired with twin WS-19s that drink fuel hard. Translation? You're paying the range penalty up front. So run the scenario. Fujian parks 900 kilometers from a hot zone. Spratley's in a flare-up. A J-35 launches, transits, arrives with fuel already bleeding out of the margin. Patrol time? About 7 minutes before bingo fuel forces a return. Throw in a chase, afterburners screaming to pursue an evasive F-35C or FA-18, and that drops to under 3 minutes of actual combat loiter. That's not air superiority. That's a cameo appearance. Now swivel to the F-35C. 20,000 pounds of internal fuel. One highly refined Pratt & Whitney F-135. Sensor fusion that turns the jet into a flying command post. Backed by a logistics web spanning 15-plus countries, spare parts, depots from Australia to Italy, the F-35C has racked up real-world hours and ops like Inherent Resolve, where it's dropped JDAMs on ISIS holdouts with pinpoint malice. The J-35? Zero combat record. No export sales to stress-test its claims. Performance data that lives more in rumor than receipt. It's a prototype playing dress-up, while the F-35 ecosystem, over 1,000 airframes delivered globally by 2026, forms a networked lethal web that shares data faster than the enemy can even agree on what just happened. The gap isn't a single gadget. It's doctrine, training, maintenance culture, and sortie tempo you can repeat. And in 2026, the system gap shows up again. Flight Global's World Air Forces makes China's inventory look massive, 3,733 aircraft. And yet the scoring still puts China below the US and even India when you weigh verifiable capability and real integration. Now watch what happens when propaganda meets the global arms market. Chinese media loves the Wing Loong 2 pitch. MQ-9 Hunter for half the price. Cool slogan. But buyers don't buy slogans. They buy receipts. A drone isn't just an airframe. It's a node. It lives or dies on comms, sat links, jam resistance, and integration. The Wing Loong looks fine in controlled demos at Zhuhai. Mock payloads, clean skies, perfect conditions. But in a real electronic fight, link drops turn a hunter into a falling object. So look at the contrast. By late 2025, Japan doubled down on MQ-9B Sea Guardians for maritime ISR. The UK beefed up its Protector fleet. India inked deals for 31 more. And that raises the obvious question. If Chinese drones undercut the price, why are US drones still getting the contracts? Because the MQ-9 isn't a demo drone. It's a combat habit. The MQ-9 family has logged over 3 million flight hours, with roughly 70% in hot zones from Afghanistan to Yemen, where it's slung hellfires and gathered intel under fire. That matters because combat use doesn't just prove the airframe, it proves the system. And that's where the Chinese export drones keep getting exposed. OSINT from conflict trackers like Oryx shows Chinese drones in export markets, like Saudi Arabia's wing Loongs in Yemen, suffering higher attrition from ground fire and jamming, unplanned landings that expose brittle data links. The US edge? The boring stuff that wins wars. Encrypted SATCOM, AI-assisted autonomy, and integration with platforms like the E3 Sentry for seamless handoffs. China's drones are like budget smartphones. Great specs on paper, but drop calls in a storm. This gap gets worse in swarm talk. China can hype drone hordes all day, but without hardened command and control, a swarm becomes a flock. The first serious jamming hit, links drop, tracks desync, and the whole formation starts freelancing. And behind it all is the quiet limiter, Russia. Engines, spares, and know-how still clipping China's wings. From 2017 to 2024, OSINT data from SIPRI shows over 50% of China's military import value tied to Russian engines, AL-31s and their kin, propping up everything from J-11s to early J-20s. And even in 2026, with domestic WS-10 variants scaling up, Beijing is still quietly ordering Russian spares to plug gaps. That's not leapfrog, that's limp along. Because the real war machine metric isn't how many jets you built, it's this. Sortie generation rate. How fast you can turn aircraft from hangar, mission, back, rearmed, back in the air. US engines like the F-119 and F-135 have overhaul lives of 4,000 plus hours, battle-tested through endless Middle East rotations. Chinese WS-10s? They often need to be torn down every 800 to 2,000 hours, according to leaked maintenance logs. So in a week-long high-tempo scrap, the math turns ugly fast. American jets can fly 4 missions for every 1 mission a Chinese jet flies. China counters with industrial muscle, claims of 700-plus engines per year from factories in Xi'an. But volume can't fake durability. You can crank out engines all day. If they wear out early, you just built yourself a bigger maintenance queue. Add fuel inefficiency, those smoky exhaust receipts again. And the PLA Air Force burns through logistics like a bonfire, while US tankers like the KC-46 keep the party going global. And when new breakthrough designs show up, a lot of them look like echoes. In August 2025, blurry images hit Weibo and vanished. Classic OSINT gold. A high-speed coaxial helicopter with rigid rotors and a rear pusher prop. It screamed copycat, almost a direct clone of Sikorsky's S-97 Raider. And the irony is brutal. The US Army axed the FARA program in February 2024, pivoting away from that concept toward unmanned long-range scouts better suited to Pacific realities. So while America moves on, China is field testing a clone of yesterday's news. A bulkier tail, unrefined exhausts hinting at power-to-weight issues and higher IR signatures, easy pickings for manpads. This isn't just hardware theft, it's doctrine lag. A 2020 answer, trying to survive in a 2026 battlefield. The Raider's X2 tech was bleeding edge in 2010. By now, it's archived. China's version? A mechanical echo, a decade behind in refinement. Here's what all those receipts point to. The US war machine is a system. Global logistics nets from Diego Garcia to Rammstein. Engines that endure, pilots forged in repetition, and data fusion that turns chaos into a targeting chain. China's Airpower looks intimidating on the showroom floor, but the boring parts keep leaking through the edits. Drones that drop links, engines that expire early, copycats chasing programs the US already canceled, and that's why the war ends before it starts. Because when the pressure becomes real, the machine keeps flying. The showroom keeps polishing.